Hello and welcome in to Tater Talks, the podcast where Tater talks gaming, content creation, sports, pop culture, current events, and whatever the hell we want. I am your host Devin, but most of you know me as TaterBoy09. For those of you who don't know this side of me, I'm a variety content creator who streams 4 days a week right here on Twitch and posts videos to YouTube, including this podcast and highlight videos. Tonight's guest is the most notorious of them all. She spent the last few years, learning everything there is to know about Korean culture, and will even say some words. She may have only been around the Twitch scene for a short time, but she already knows all the ins and outs. Please welcome in my friend, the notorious Afro.
Annyeonghaseyo.
Annyeonghaseyo. I completely forgot that you were learning Korean until we just talked recently, because we hadn't really talked it was yesterday when we were both just talking just the both of us, and it had been a minute that I actually forgot that you were learning Korean and learn everything about it.
네, 맞아요.
What does that mean?
Yes, that's right.
We'll have the Korean version on later tonight, I promise.
Yeah.
It's the second half of the podcast.
That's about as much Korean as I feel comfortable speaking. I can understand quite a bit now, but
that's good.
Speaking is something totally different. But Hi everybody.
Yes, welcome in. It's great to have you here. On episode 8 of Tater Talks, we have broken the 7 episode stigma. That is the good news for today. There's the big phrase that kept going around where it was like, hey, or like the big stigma around podcasting is like, how are you going to get past that 7 episode bump, basically? So here we are on number 8. Look at that.
I had a podcast, which we're kind of doing something from my podcast tonight. And I feel like we stopped around 7.
Oh,
I never knew about that, but
I've watched.
It was about that.
Yeah. I've watched and read a lot about just like random podcasting since I've basically started this. And that was the one thing that everybody brought up. It was like 7. That's your magic number. And I was like, well, I think we'll be okay. But I had seen that your podcast that you were on, which we'll talk a little bit more in depth about later. But I did see that when you were on it, the one that you were on, I think you posted on like Facebook or something like that. Like past episodes, and I only saw 7 and like around 6 or 7 like that, so I
definitely didn't get to 10, so yeah, it's about that. Well, that's funny.
Podcasting is a lot harder than people think. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of time, especially if you want to do it right. Anyways, welcome in. You are actually our first female that we've had on the show as well, so another major first here, so feel extra special.
I do.
Good to hear it. Yeah, well, let's see here. So I do just want to give a quick shout out since we're at the beginning of the show here. I do want to shout out that this podcast is streamed live on twitch.tv/taterboy09, so be sure to follow the channel so you know when the show goes live. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are watching this on YouTube for weekly uploads on Thursday morning. Is there anything that you would like to promote? Let's just start it right at the beginning here. Anything that you want to promote? Any Instagrams that you take selfies on or anything like that?
No. I mean, if you want to find me, I'm NotoriousAfro on every platform. So if I'm out there, it'll be under NotoriousAfro.
Including your Discord, right? You have a pretty active Discord.
Yeah, I have a Discord, NotoriousAfro. My Twitch is NotoriousAfro, but I rarely stream, but maybe that'll change once I get a nicer computer. My Instagram, Notorious's_Afro. My Twitter, which I don't use because I'm banned or something for God knows what.
Oh.
Is also NotoriousAfro.
Oh.
And I also have NotoriousAfro.com, which is not up right now.
Oh, it's not up. Okay. Well, good to know.
I own the rights to everything.
Basically, you're just notorious Afro everywhere, which is good because you want to get your name out there and you want to stick it as many places you possibly can, and keep it as many places you possibly can.
C Walker gifted me a sub. Thank you.
I did see that. I did see that as well. Yeah, Seawalker coming in with the gift sub, which Seawalker's taking care of all the podcast guests. So we appreciate you, buddy. We appreciate you very, very much. Yeah. Tater Dabs in chat, Tater Pogs in chat, or Tater
Peter
Squads,
Dab.
excuse me, in chat. All the good stuff. That's right. That's all the support that you get when you're over here on the Twitch channel. So make sure you come follow that. That's the big one. That's where it's streamed right now, live, right here. Heard it here first. I wanted to kind of talk about your other Discord that you had open. Is that one that's even going? The one where it was like a bartender one, basically.
Oh, it didn't ever really come to anything, but I did create that Discord called SARS Bar, which went over a lot of people's heads. I thought it was brilliant. SARS Bar. But,
well, tell people what it was.
Well, basically, it was just because everybody is quarantined and not having anything to do. So it was kind of something for my in real life friends to come to and talk to each other, since we can't, we couldn't. I still won't talk to anybody in person, but
Sure.
just a place for people to hang out, play games, watch movies, or watch cartoons together.
Yeah. The thing with Discord is that I think that a lot of people don't realize what it is or how user friendly it really is. And I didn't realize this at first either, because I actually hated Discord when it first started. But once you actually start using Discord and using a lot of its functionality is a lot better than some of the systems you would probably use at work. Like, any work, any job place that you're at, Discord is probably matched to that, and it's free.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, it's really hard to get people who don't game and who don't know about these what should I say, like Discord or Twitch or those kind of websites, to get them to even agree to sign up or go on. People are just weary of doing that kind of stuff, or they don't have time or don't care to.
Right, exactly. And it's also, I think it's one of those things where it's, you're putting your information. Well, I don't necessarily know if it's exactly like, putting your information out there, because it's really all it takes to create a username is an email and a username. It's really all it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I heard that during the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of people were starting to use Discord as opposed to what's the other one that everybody's using now? Because of Zoom, because Zoom is way more trackable.
Oh, it is.
And so they were encouraging people to start a Discord because you can be more anonymous.
Mm. Was that the thing that John Oliver was talking about, like facial recognition?
Oh God, maybe. I don't know.
That? Oh man, John Oliver is such a funny. I don't know. I like watching his show. He puts a lot of thought into his shows, but like sometimes they're a little bit out there. I mean, they're legit. He like, he doesn't just say something that's he wouldn't just say something to say something, right?
Yeah, no, I love John Oliver.
But he says some things that he at least backs what he says. But they might seem crazy at first, but he backs it. Like I don't know if it was the most recent episode, but one of the last few episodes, he was talking about how it's like the facial recognition thing, about how it's gonna be the next big step into identifying people, and specifically right now identifying people at like protests.
Well, I think the U.S. is really behind, like, because I have learned a lot about Korea, and in other countries, they have so many CCTV. It's everywhere, so everybody's already being tracked. Where here, there's not CCTV everywhere. I mean, there is starting to be, but it's not like in other countries like the UK or in South Korea.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think there's just differences in culture too. It just happens. Speaking of differences in culture, what would you say? Because we're gonna go back to the you're learning about Korean culture. If we're gonna go back to that, because I think it's hilarious. I think it's not just hilarious, but I think it's also fascinating that someone just. I mean, how did you even start that thought process? One day you were just like, I'm just gonna learn.
I started watching some Chinese and Korean dramas, some historical dramas, and I got really into them. And some of them were like 60 episodes, like these Chinese dramas.
Jeez.
And then I was also watching Korean dramas, and then I had to actually dedicate time to watching them. You know, like when you're watching something in English on Netflix, you can just kind of multitask. So you can leave the room and still listen, or be looking at your phone for a minute and still listen. But when I was watching these dramas, I had to actually watch it,
Right.
or I wouldn't know what was happening. So it got kind of irritating. So I was like, I gotta learn this language so that I can also be looking at my phone sometimes. And so I kind of just started looking and trying to decide whether I wanted to learn Japanese, Chinese, or Korean. And I looked at the alphabet, and the Chinese alphabet is like 5,000 characters, more than that. It's
Oh,
just like a
jeez.
different character for each word.
Yeah.
Where the Korean alphabet is only 26 letters. It's just like
Oh,
our alphabet.
sure.
So the Korean alphabet's really easy to learn. So I was like, I'm going with that.
Well, there it
If it's an
is.
easy alphabet, and the Japanese alphabet's a lot harder too. And so I picked the easiest alphabet.
Is it easier because it's actually because of the way that they form words is similar to English, or is it easier just because of that 26 letters and we have 26 letters? You know, English has 26 letters. Is it easier that way, or is it just easier because their words form like ours do, or like English speakers do?
Um, I mean, they don't exactly form like ours do. They have letters that don't. They have letters that don't exist, and like sounds that come out of their mouth that don't exist, and we
Oh,
have letters that don't exist. Like they don't have a Q. They don't have an R or an L. They don't have an L. They don't really have an R. Like their LR is like a combined
uh
like a
huh,
sound. So like if you're gonna say lipstick, they'll probably say ripstick, reapstick.
uh
So
huh.
it's like different. It's it's there's some different sounds. There's sounds that you would never use that come out of your mouth um, with Korean and Asian languages. Asian languages are some of the hardest. Like next to I think Russian's pretty hard because I started looking about language, got interested in languages, and
Uh huh.
Asian languages are some of the hardest to learn and pronounce.
Yeah. Well, I think especially coming from like American culture and stuff like that, you know, just seeing like how different just it looks, I think is a lot probably pretty daunting to people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool that you saw that and you saw that as an opportunity. You're like, hey, I'm gonna challenge myself. I'm gonna learn this, and I'm also gonna do my best to not just not just learn about it, but also then take that next step to let's learn about the culture.
Well, and at first when I started watching them, it's so funny. I didn't know couldn't tell the difference between what they were saying. Like I didn't know what they were saying anyway. So if I was watching a Chinese show and watching a Korean show, to me, I couldn't tell the difference between what was Chinese and what was Korean and what was Japanese.
Sure.
Like there was no difference. I was like, this is just an Asian language. So when I go back now and I was looking at some of the first shows I watched, I thought it was Korean, and it turns out it was a Chinese show, and I was like,
Oh.
oh, I was like, man, now Chinese, and now I can tell the difference between the languages. Like if I know someone's speaking Chinese or if someone's
Yeah.
speaking Korean, but back then I didn't, and honestly, because of you, and the other couple guys at work, I learned a lot more about Korean. I wouldn't have gotten as far in learning Korean if it wasn't for you guys. Where if I hadn't have gotten so jealous that you guys were hanging out with each other outside of work. So
You
one
can
of
say their names. They've been on the podcast before. Andrew and
yeah,
James. Yeah.
yeah, Andrew and James and Devin would all play games and hang out outside of work. And so I'd hear about these 360 no shows or whatever they are. So I would hear about all this stuff and hear about you guys talking about hanging out. And I was like, where are you guys hanging out? And you told me about Twitch and you told me about Discord. So I was like, well, let me just go on and
Yeah.
at least watch. So I started watching you guys play. And then I signed up and I was like, oh, I want to stream. So then I brought my computer in, and Devin and Andrew both like took my laptop and installed stuff and hooked me up. So I came back home and I started exploring, and I realized there were so many Korean streamers on Twitch, and there were like a strong Korean community, and there's a lot of English speakers who are learning Korean on Twitch too. So I joined a study group on Twitch with this guy from Atlanta, this Korean guy from Atlanta who was Korean but didn't really speak Korean. So every day he would go on and we would all do lessons together and kind of learn together. So I ended up making a lot of Korean friends on Twitch, and I wouldn't have been on here if it wasn't for you guys.
Yeah. Crazy how, just the community works with Twitch. I mean, even if you're looking at just, if we're just looking at like my community, that's a pretty small corner of Twitch, but hey, it's still a corner of Twitch, right? So everybody has their own little connection spots. And I think that's what makes Twitch great. I mean, we have people, one of the first big raids that I ever got, shout out Carlos. He's probably not here right now, but shout out Carlos. He lived in, I think it was Argentina. And that was one of the first times where I realized how big Twitch is, especially because I think a lot of American culture is like, this is us, right? We're here, and a lot of other cultures conform to American society. Like there's English everywhere, which I guess is partly for like, England too. But I mean, maybe that's part of the American culture right there, that I'm just assuming that other countries have English there because it's for us, I mean, who knows, right? I don't know. But that was one of the first times where I realized, where I was like, wow, this is a big deal. Not just to Americans, not just to people in the North America or anything like that. It's everywhere. And it's great community building.
Yeah, it's nuts. Viking here says that his cousin streams from South Africa. Yeah. But it's crazy because I would have never made the friends that I've made if it wasn't for Twitch. So, like I'll be in my Discord and I'll have my friends from Korea in there. I have a couple friends from Brazil in there, and a good friend that lives in the UK. So
yeah,
it's so funny. We'll all be in there talking, and I have a friend that's from South Africa too, and I wouldn't have met them. And I actually all met them through, we were all learning Korean, and I just happened to meet them in different Korean streams, and we were all kind of learning Korean together. But I would have never met them. And I think gaming is such an international sport that it brings every culture together.
Yeah.
It's unique in that way.
It really is. It's a universal language, really, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, everybody plays the game. The language that the characters are speaking might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But it's the same game, so you can play with whoever, and it's based on skill.
Yeah, exactly. And shout out Viking. Shout out everybody in the chat, by the way. Appreciate you guys coming, hanging out, chilling. Viking is actually from South Africa, too. So, fun fact. There is no race in gaming. No truer words have been spoken. Fact. Anyways, what is so like we were saying earlier, you started learning not just the Korean language, but some of the Korean culture. What would you say is one of the most interesting differences about Korean culture compared to, say, American culture? I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm trying to think. Now I'm dating someone that lives in South Korea, and I always bring these questions to him, and he sometimes gets irritated because I'm like, is this really true? So like something I was talking to him about recently was, I was asking him if they had school sports. Like when you're young, do you like sign up for soccer and basketball and like football and those kind of sports? And they don't do that. So they don't have like, he's like, oh yeah, we play on the playground. And I'm like, no, like where you sign up and you have like a coach and you meet up once a week and then play games and you have like an actual ref, and they don't do that.
Oh.
They don't do that there. I was like, well, there's another reason you're coming here and I'm not going there. But also when it comes to schooling, their schooling is crazy. So I was like watching the show, and I asked him, I said, so basically when they go to school, they get out of school and then they go to school again. And sometimes, so I was watching this show called Reply 1988. So if you want a good starter Korean show, Reply 1988 is really funny, and it takes place in 1988, and it's these friends that all live in this like on this block, and it talks about their friendship, the young people's friendship and the parents' friendship. But the kids, they study, and then when they get out of school, they study some more, and they have like these places that you can go and like rent out a little space, a little desk, and you study some more, and they'll come home at 11 o'clock at night. So they're not, you get done with school at whatever time, and then you study for 5 more hours, 6 more hours for like your SATs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that for like
happening.
next level stuff?
Yeah, but you start doing that around your junior, senior year.
Of high school?
Of high school.
Well,
So
yeah.
you're in school from 8 in the morning till 11 at night. It's crazy. And they don't, so you don't play sports. They don't have like sports. They have a couple of specialized high schools for sports and different things like that. But they don't have sports teams at their high schools.
Yeah, it seems. I guess it is different. I mean, they're. And this is just from not a lot of research from it, but obviously, but they're a lot more academic driven there, from what I understand. And I mean,
they're very academic
that's just
driven.
Asian culture in general. It seems like. So I mean, it makes sense that they would just that's what they want to do. That's what they want to strive for. Is they want to strive for academic excellence, as opposed to whatever sport they might play, whether it be soccer or whatever other sports that they may have there. Once again, I'm extremely ignorant when it comes to different cultures. That's why I bring
and baseball is probably the main sports in Asian cultures.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's why I bring guests on my show who know more about it, so they can not only educate myself but educate everybody else. Is it all clubs there? Is it privatized, and isn't boarding schools big there? Is what we're being asked.
I don't know about boarding schools. I'm sure that's just like here. It's not big. Like that's what most people do. I think maybe private tutors are big. If you have money, that you'd have a tutor, and you'd go to.
That makes sense.
Instead of staying at your school, like they have school based ones, and I think you could, if you have money, you could probably get a better program to get into. Yeah, they do have clubs there. So like you would do like academic clubs maybe, as opposed to like sports clubs.
I see.
But not really boarding schools. I mean, I think they're a lot more social. Like they're a lot more socialist. Like like they have more like their healthcare, their education, and stuff like that.
Do they have free healthcare there?
It's not free, but I don't think it's super expensive.
Yeah.
So the craziest thing that I have learned about Korea is, let me see what this is called. I have to look it up real quick.
Okay.
I think it's called Joseon. It's something. It's so basically, anyway, it has to do with renting an apartment in Korea. So here, if we're renting an apartment, we pay monthly.
Uh-huh.
You maybe put like a month's down payment down, and then you rent the apartment, and so you pay $500 a month. Well, in Korea, they have that system, but they also have this other system where let's say you're going to move into this apartment, they figure out how much that apartment would cost if you were going to buy it. So let's say that apartment costs $100,000 if you were going to buy it. So you go to the bank. So if you want to rent this apartment and live in this apartment, you go to the bank, you borrow $100,000 from the bank, and you give it to the owner of the apartment. So you're giving the owner of the apartment $100,000.
Okay.
But then you're not paying any rent. But at the end of your 2-year lease, the owner of the apartment gives you the $100,000 back.
Oh,
So in the meantime, you are paying the bank, but you're only paying the bank maybe $100, $200 a month.
would that just be like interest and repayments, basically?
Yeah. So basically, you would have an apartment for like $100, $200 a month. If you can afford to get in a loan, you would have this apartment for $100, $200 a month.
Yeah.
So you give the landlord $100,000. When you leave, they give you the $100,000 back. Then you'd give the bank back the $100,000, and you would move on.
So basically, you're just kind of holding that 100,000 as just like a deposit, sort of,
Well, it's kind
that
of
you
like
would
you're
get back.
yeah, it's kind of like you're giving the landlord an interest-free loan.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense too.
So they can take that money and do with it whatever they want. So there is some risk to it. Like if they can't give it back to you, what are you going to do? You'll have a
Right.
lien. You'll have a lien against their apartment complex, and these apartment complexes aren't like the ones here. I'm talking about skyrise. All the apartments in Seoul. Seoul has millions and millions of people. It's like
Yeah.
more crowded than New York City per mile, and those
Wow.
those apartments go up. I don't know how many stories. 50 floors. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
true, but they're huge. Like you don't have houses there; you have apartments.
Right. Yeah. Is
But
it's too
it's this
compact of an
weird.
area.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this weird system. Like basically, you're living. If you can get a loan, you're living. You're only paying like $200 rent, which is really cheap. You just have to be able to make enough money to get that loan.
Right. So you basically need to be able to get the $100,000
Hmm.
is the biggest hurdle,
Hmm.
basically. After that, then just whatever is interest and whatever payments that the bank tells you to pay back.
Yeah, and basically, you're getting a loan from the government. The government is
Yeah.
very. I don't understand. I don't understand everything. They get money for. My boyfriend, he gets money for. He got money for working. They gave it like sent him like a
Oh.
$200. They sent him like $200, $300 for like credit card to use around the neighborhood for working. And then
Huh.
when you're not working, you get money. He gets very mad because he's like, it's such a waste of money. The government's doing this, but I
Oh.
mean, but it's sending it to him, so he uses it.
Well, obviously. Why would you not?
Yeah, I mean, he uses it.
I say
He'd like to use it at the mouse store and buy a new mouse, but he has to buy it.
if anybody's stimulus check that they got during this pandemic isn't already gone, I think you're doing it wrong, right?
Exactly. I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for the next stimulus
Yeah,
check.
when's the next one coming? Let's get that one going, huh?
I have that tagged on my Google, so it comes to my phone every time something new happens.
That's got to be stressful, to be honest.
I don't know if this will happen. I mean, it's honestly, it almost has to happen. Things are not improving with this COVID shit. It's not getting better.
Well, we just recently everything just went back to hell with everybody opening back up again. So I don't know.
Well, it was never better. I mean, we're like
That's fair.
The UK won't let Americans in.
Yeah.
Like they're letting all these other people in. The Americans aren't allowed to go to the UK.
Yeah, I thought what I just read was that they're allowed that people are allowed to go back there if that's like their home country, but they're not
Hmm.
opening it up to like tourists or anything like that.
No, if I want to
So
go to, my plan was to go to Korea at the end of this year, beginning of next year, but I can't because if I go, I have to. They're not going to let Americans come in. First off, we're not even through the first wave of COVID. But if I did go, I'd have to quarantine for 14 days. That's my whole. That would be my my whole vacation
yeah, that'd
time.
be your whole trip right there.
So that's just not a possibility. And I'm like, and I'm sure they're not going to let him in because Trump's a racist. So if he hears someone from South Korea wants to come in, oh, that's not happening. He doesn't know the difference between South Korea and China.
Yeah, I don't know if
This
he's the one who's stamping everybody's passports, but I get what
this
you're
school.
saying. I get what you're saying.
He's not, but he's putting the restrictions down. I mean, it's
Right.
and with him, it could become a war. Like if the UK doesn't let us in, which they shouldn't because we're a risk. He's could get vindictive and be like, "Well, I'm not doing blah 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 for no reason, just because he's mad at them for protecting their country like they should."
Yeah. I
Dirty
don't know.
Americans.
Yeah, I don't know what goes through politicians' head in general. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Dirty
That's why I
Americans.
didn't get into the poli sci field. I'm in the making stupid jokes on the internet field, so
Hmm.
that's why I got into that one. All right, last Korean question, then we'll jump to our top fives here.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you consider yourself a K-pop stan, and why is BTS your favorite?
No,
Answer honestly.
BTS is not my favorite at all. My favorite is actually Got Seven. Um, and that is the only K-pop group I stan.
That's the only one you stan? Okay.
Hmm.
But you're at least banned off Twitter, so you can't be a Twitter K-pop stan, so that's good.
No, but I am faithful to them.
Well, that's good. I didn't know that they had faith. I don't know. I didn't
You
realize
don't know
K-pop was a
K-pop.
religion. My fault.
K-pop is a religion. Have you can't fuck with K-pop fans? Oh
I,
my god! You know they were doing that whatever that White Lives Matter that thing that came out, and then the K-pop fans started taking over the White Lives Matter and started using that hashtag to post K-pop clips.
yeah, I did see that. It was like, it was Twitter and somebody else, or it was
Yeah.
the K-pop stans on Twitter and somebody else, some other random group. I think it was like the Gen Zers or something like that.
Hmm.
TikTokers, that's what it was.
Yeah. I mean,
It was the TikTokers and the K-pop stans who just started messing everybody's lives up, and it was hilarious.
if I was younger, I would go crazy, like because I was a Backstreet Boy person. Like I love boy bands, so it makes sense. Like if I was younger and I would have discovered Korea when I was younger, oh god, I'd be crazy. But Korean fans are and K-pop fans, they are nuts. Like the singers have to put out and the record labels have to put out warnings,
Yeah.
like tell people to stop like coming to their homes.
Oh,
And
jeez.
these girls, they fight
Yeah. I mean,
online for their groups,
yeah. I mean,
and they will fight physically, and they get angry. It's interesting. I'm in a couple like Facebook and Instagram groups, and man, those girls are not playing.
I will say that my only true experience with BTS was when they were on SNL, and there was a group of girls who were screaming the
Hmm.
entire time that they were up there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it makes
Those,
sense. You get what you you like what you like, and then you take it to as far of an extent as you want to,
yeah, K-pop is getting bigger and bigger.
It
It's
is.
The Korean wave, but
It's the Korean wave.
call it the Korean wave. But I'm not a BTS fan. No,
No.
gross. They're not cute.
What was your stan?
Got Seven.
Got seven. Got it. We'll have
And
to
they're the best looking K-pop group out there. Every single one of them. Still looking.
yeah.
They're
Well,
so cute. They're so cute.
I'll have to check it out apparently.
Yeah.
Maybe you can link me some good ones later and I'll listen to them after the stream is over.
Oh, you won't like it. Do you like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC? Are you like big into boy bands?
Okay, so let's just be honest with just everybody take a second right now and be honest with yourself. If you didn't like the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC, you're just lying to yourself. So it is what it is. Of course I liked I couldn't say that I probably liked one of them more than the other one, but it was because they were catchy. It wasn't because it was,
I was a big boy band fan. I've seen NSYNC, 98 Degrees,
98
Backstreet Boys.
Degrees was the other big one, yeah.
Um, I've seen all of them in concert.
All of them. That's right. We
I
got
saw
some.
NSYNC front row center on Miami Beach in like 2001. Oh, amazing.
Got some
But
truers
yeah,
in the chat. And yes, One Direction was after the NSYNC Backstreet Boys
I don't know
phase,
about one.
so
I
I
was young.
I
In
was
high
out
school.
on that one.
Yeah, I was out on that one too. I'm too old for that, guys.
Yeah, that
I
was.
won't reveal my age, but
Well, didn't you just turn 26 the other day or 24? I don't remember.
know my birthday is October.
Oh, well, in October you'll be in the 20s somewhere, I'm sure.
29 and holding.
That's right. That's right. All right, well, let's get on to the next part here, which the next part, I'm actually really excited for this next part. And I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time today going through some things. So like we were talking about at the top of the show here, Notorious Afro used to be on a podcast that was called
Pop Top 5.
Pop Top 5 is what it's called. Tell everybody what the synopsis of that was.
Basically, we would, there was a group of us that would get together for each podcast episode, and we would each come with a top 5 list of something from popular culture. So I think one episode was top 5 Nintendo games, original NES games, top 5 stand-up comics, top 5 romantic comedies, top 5 Marvel characters. So anything from pop culture, I think it was top 5 albums we did. So anything pop culture, we would make a top 5 list for.
Yeah. So we're going to take a little piece of that, and it's going to be the just top 5 whatever. I'm not going to steal names or anything like that. But it is first and foremost, it's a great idea for a podcast. So yeah, we'll get links to old episodes, probably on the YouTube when I put it up. I'll include them. But yeah, I mean, it's a great idea for a podcast first and foremost. So we're gonna take that, and what we decided to roll with is the top 5 fantasy / sci-fi shows. So we're gonna run those down, and I think the structure, if you're telling me right, you basically start from 5. So I'll say my 5, you say your 5, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll go to our 4th favorite, and then 3rd, and then so on and so on, right?
I will say top 5 with this. It's hard to actually put these. I just kind of made my 5 that I like. It's really hard to say who's number 1.
Yeah.
And who's number 1 has changed throughout my life. So. And
also, like, some of them are, at least that I came up with, some of my 5 that I came up with were kind of semantic based on where I would put them. So I'm in the same boat as you. I'm in the same boat where it's like, let's just say top 5, not really in order or anything like that. And at first, when we were first talking about this, I was like, shoot, I haven't watched a lot of TV shows lately. I hope I can find something that's 5 shows that I have watched that were fantasy or sci-fi. But what I did was I looked up IMDb's like top 50 fantasy shows and top 50 sci-fi shows. I was like, oh, I have 13 I can pick from now.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many shows are fantasy, sci-fi. Almost all shows, I think. A lot of shows.
Well, and it's like, okay, so some of mine, and once we get into it, it'll make a little bit more sense. But like some of them, like we were thinking of that weren't necessarily just TV shows, like a real life ABC drama or something like that. So it kind of goes a long way. So I want you want me to go first, or you want to go first with your number 5?
Go first with your number 5.
You want me to go number first? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw my number 5 out there, and I'm going to say Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty. I've never watched Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty is the dumbest Cartoon Network show that you'd probably ever see, but it's really smart in a lot of different ways. It's a cartoon, which is what I was kind of bringing up to, where sometimes you don't think of fantasy shows as like cartoons and stuff like that, but it's a really good show. It's basically what it's about is there's this guy named Rick, this guy named Morty, and they're just doing stupid adventures. And yeah, you need to have a pretty high IQ to enjoy Rick and Morty.
I tried watching an episode once. I just couldn't get into it, but I should try again. I'll try again.
No, that was a joke, by the way.
I know. Is it an Adult Swim? Is an Adult Swim?
Yeah, it's Adult Swim. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's always like, it was one of those shows where the humor comes really fast, and you have to it links together really quickly, and it's this long stretch joke basically for the entirety of the show. So there was this whole meme that went around. I was like, if you get Rick and Morty, you have a 200 IQ. Like, oh, come on. It's just a joke.
Used to be into. When I was younger, I watched a lot of Adult Swim back when C-Lab 2020 and Aqua Teen and
Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
The Brack show was my favorite. Oh my god, so funny, so cute, so cute. So my number 5.
Yep.
I picked my number 5 because it was one of the first shows I think that I watched that was sci-fi fantasy, and it was Star Trek, um, The Next Generation.
Yep. Every list I saw was like sci-fi shows. It was all the top 5 were different variations of Star Trek.
Star Trek. So yeah, Star Trek: The Next Generation was out when I was young. I was born in 1980, so in the early 90s. I don't know when it came out. Probably early 90s, maybe late 80s. That came out. So I was in love with Picard, obviously, but I was in love with Not Geordi. Will Wheaton. Yeah, Will Wheaton was one of my first crushes. Well, Howard the Duck was my first crush.
Oh, okay.
But Wesley Crusher was up there.
Do we want to talk about this Howard the Duck thing? I mean,
No, Howard the Duck was my first crush.
well, hey, you see different things in different people, and
the math doesn't add up.
to be fair, didn't Howard the Duck bang a lady in that movie? I never saw the movie.
Howard the Duck did not hold up. I watched it. I have it on VHS, and I didn't watch it on VHS, but I watched it. Not that maybe within the last couple of years. I couldn't finish it.
It was just not there.
It was not good. It was not good. But yeah, I mean, it's very weird because these ducks are sexualized, and yeah, like they have sex and duck sex and.
Yep, and Howard the Duck, also a Marvel character, by the way, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, and it was like a Steven. Who was it? Not Steven. Maybe it was Steven Spielberg or George Lucas. One of those kind of.
Really?
Directors their studio did it. But yeah, Howard the Duck was my first crush. But Star Trek: The Next Generation, because I think that was like my first introduction to sci-fi and my love of those kind of shows.
That makes sense. I was always a Star Wars, not a Star Trek person.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always like, I mean, I watched the Chris Pine movies that came out a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like I watched those, but I felt like those were just like Marvel movies, trying to pass off as Star Trek movies.
I think if you didn't grow up when Star Trek: The Next Generation was there, I think that is the best Star Trek. I mean, obviously there's the old one with whatever, but the Star Trek: The Next Generation was like one of those first great sci-fi shows. I don't think, and I never watched the other ones. They all kind of, were just a cheap version of the original.
Right. What does he say in Wayne's World? He's like, it's like Star Trek: The Next Generation. It'll always be close to the original, but it'll never be as good, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. Makes sense. All right, number 4.
Yeah.
Number 4. You want to roll since I went first last time?
Yeah. My number 4 is Black Mirror, which isn't exactly necessarily a TV show, because it is a TV show, but they're not.
It's on
connected.
Netflix. It's still a show. I would say.
A show. But my number 4 is Black Mirror. I love Black Mirror. My favorite episodes, White Bear, I really liked, and
that show's kind of a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's kind of like a little like the Twilight Zone. It's not like the Twilight Zone, but it's kind of like the Twilight Zone, but with technology. So have you watched? You've never watched it?
I've never had the guts to watch Black Mirror. From what I've seen on memes, is that we're living a Black Mirror episode right now.
It fucks you up because it's the technology that is already out there, or is being developed, and it just depends on the episode. But you see that happening. Like you can already see the beginnings of it happening. And the episode, kind of makes the worst case scenario, but it kind of makes you realize how sick we are all, and how technology really controls us, and what can happen when it gets out of control, and what happens when it gets out of control. Even if we're like talking about cyberbullying and that kind of stuff, and people watching us.
Yeah, that's one of those shows that I wish I had watched, but I'll be honest, I actually never had the guts to start watching it because of this exact situation right here. Because it's one of those shows that just is totally weird, and like messes with what you it messes with what you perceive as reality right now, and it's taking that and it's putting it into a TV show, and now you're seeing it play out in the show, but then you're also seeing it play out in real life, and it's kind of freaky.
Yeah, it just depends. Black Mirror is it's such a variety. There's heartwarming, like there's only one heartwarming one, so I'd recommend not watching that until you've watched all of them. Because when you see this, I won't say which episode, but when you see this heartwarming episode, like I was bawling at the end. I was like, what is, like, it was so unexpected. I was like, what is this, like, kind of emotional nice one? But yeah, it just depends. Some are more disturbing than others. There's some that are just funny, that are really funny and not so disturbing, and then there's ones that really fuck you up. White Bear will fuck you up.
Well, I can't wait. I'll have to check it out now.
Yeah.
And Franker Z in the chat for the puppers, by the way. It's a good emote. It's funny. It's a dog emote. So let's see if we can get through our entire list without having any shows that we've ever seen on the other person's list before.
Yeah, right.
Because
I know it won't happen, but there's one that we both have, so
I doubt it. Well, maybe.
Okay.
I bet there is one we have. Yeah. So I am gonna say that number 4 is gonna be the show Teen Wolf for me.
I have no clue what that is.
It's based off of the Michael J. Fox movie, or was that?
Oh, the show Teen Wolf, like it's on MTV.
I think it's on CW, I believe.
Get out of here!
It was. I know it's
Teen Wolf.
no. So I'll admit that show was actually, it was MTV. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
That show actually had some really, really good seasons. And this is what's going to be with the entirety of my list, except for one show, is that every episode up to like season 4 was once you got past like the teen drama stuff, which didn't really hit my TV show spot, I guess, if you want to call it that. What really got me into about that show is the character building that it does. And then not only introducing new characters, but making those new characters relevant. So,
I'm
it's,
not gonna lie, but I'm looking for a show to watch, and now I'm probably gonna watch that.
There's some seasons that you would think that some of these kids are really good actors, or like you think that some of these kids are like Oscar winning actors, and then it's definitely worth the watch if you can find it. I don't know where it's at right now. If you can find it,
I have a special site, but I'll definitely watch it. I mean,
site.
Vampire Diaries is I didn't put Vampire Diaries on here, but I still watch all those kids shows, so what am I gonna do?
It's not really okay. We're getting word from the chat from Cat Lady, who is also Mrs. Tater.
I have Prime.
It's on Prime and it's on there right now. So
hi, boo.
It's worth. I think it's worth watching. There's some really good character. Like the main character is really good. But what is probably my favorite character on that show is the comic relief secondary character.
What's his name?
His name is Styles. You actually don't even recognize which is from it's built from his last name, which is Stilinski. You don't actually even know his first name until like the second to last episode.
Okay, I know. I just looked it up. I know that kid because he's in the what's that, Maze Runner movies.
Yeah, yep, those movies, yep.
I read Maze Runner. The movies are not as good as the book.
That's what I've heard. We can talk about Ready Player One next if you want. No, we don't have we don't have all day.
Fucking garbage ass movie.
That movie was so like 80s fan service, wasn't it?
I've never even. Did you read Ready Player One?
I don't read books, no.
Oh, nothing like the book. I mean, honestly, if I hadn't read the book and I didn't realize it was a movie about that book, I would be like, oh, this is a good movie. And I've watched it more than once, so it's not bad. I just don't. I separate it from the book because it is totally different from the book.
Yeah, but I also like that movie, but yeah, it was definitely an 80s fan service movie that you could just tell. It was like, hey, we're going to include as much stuff as we possibly can, and you could tell that.
More fan service.
Oh, it's even more than that, really.
Oh, it's more than that, but it's not so corny. It's not. It's deeper than that. It's more interesting and more complicated, I should say. The actual and then there's more action. You would like it if you're a gamer, you would like it more because it really talks about some of those original games and like
Yeah.
it's more interesting.
Well, I wonder if it's on Audible. I do have an Audible credit that I can use for it, so maybe
Oh,
I'll get it and then I'll use it.
yeah, do that.
I'll have to. I'll have to. So yeah, bottom line, Teen Wolf is a
All
good
right,
show. Watch it.
number 3.
Number 3, and I'll go since you went first
All
last
right.
time. So everything that I looked up was that this was a fantasy show, and I'm
Okay.
gonna roll with that. And this is mainly for the Twitch chat right now because they are gonna. So, I don't think they're gonna rip me apart for it, but I think that I'm gonna get a lot of question marks out of this.
Okay.
Which this would be considered a fantasy show, and I'm not considering it an anime, but an American animation show. So I'm gonna say that number 3 is Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a cartoon. It's American animation cartoon, and it's about the bending. It's the element bending. So like earth, fire, air, and water. That's one of those shows that it's only 3 seasons long, and this if you have any interest in any shows at all, this is like a must watch, in my opinion,
Okay.
because it's like 12 episodes for the first 2 seasons, and then the last season is 20 episodes. And this is one of those it's like I said, it's American animation. It's not anime, like Japanese anime. So it's on Netflix right now. It's one of those. It's a show that every episode means something. It's not like where there's 50 episodes of Goku in Dragon Ball Z where he's powering up to fight Frieza, right? Every show has some sort of purpose to getting to the end goal. So it's definitely a great show. I recommend watching it. You'll be instantly hooked from the opening credits. I promise you. Yeah, we got a lot of DBZ fanboys in chat too, I'm sure.
So my number 3 is Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Classic.
which
It's a
used
classic.
to be my number 1, but I still feel guilty not making it number 1. But Buffy, Buffy is one of the. I have Buffy comics. I have Buffy everything. I've seen every Buffy episode. I don't know how many times. I have them on DVD. I have so much. I just love Buffy. Joss Whedon is my god, and he
I
can
did
do
not
no
know Joss
wrong.
Whedon did those shows.
What?
I didn't know
He
that.
wrote them and directed them.
I did
What
not
are
know.
you talking about?
That's great. I didn't know that.
Creator of Buffy.
Wow.
Buffy's what got him everything else.
Yeah, that's one of those shows that I never got into. I think it was a little bit before my time because by the time that show was out, I was watching like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think it was a little bit past my time. And I remember we tried to watch it. Cat Lady did watch the whole thing again. I tried to watch it with her, and I was like, this did not age well at all.
You know what doesn't age well and what never aged well is the first season.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
The first season was more episodic, so it didn't make sense.
Oh, sure.
And I think there were some issues which happen with a lot of people who are creating a show when you have to deal with like studio heads telling you how to do something, which is also the case with one of his other shows, but Dollhouse. But the first season's horrible. It's not horrible, but it's not my favorite season, and it's episodic, and it's not it doesn't have like a span. It does have something, but yeah. But I wouldn't judge it on the first season. Get through the first season, and the rest it gets brilliant.
Yeah.
If you like Joss Whedon and you respect what he's doing now, Buffy's that same way, and it's very interesting, and he did a lot of things in Buffy that no one had ever done before.
Well, I think first and foremost what he did in that show was had a female lead, which you probably didn't see that very often in TV shows at all at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean,
the Slayers were the rulers.
Right.
Slayers, strong girls.
And not just a female lead character, but a badass female lead character too.
Exactly. Whenever I see any girls fight, I'm like, I wonder if Buffy would kick her ass.
That's the bar right there.
Buffy's number 3.
Buffy's number 3. Okay. All right. Give me your number 2.
My number 2 is Game of Thrones, which maybe I could have put that at 3, but Game of Thrones is number 2.
Okay, because I thought you were gonna put that at number 1, and I was gonna throw up. I'm not gonna lie.
No. My number 1 is my number 1.
Yeah, don't spoil it. We're getting there.
But Game of Thrones.
So let's talk about Game of Thrones, shall we?
Are we on a time limit here?
No, we're not on a time limit.
Okay.
Yeah, you asked that after the Game of Thrones question. I like it.
Well, I was like trying to hurry it along because you said an hour, so I'm like, do I need to hurry?
An hour-ish. We're good. We're good.
Okay.
Yes, Game of Thrones. So give me why it's your number 2, and I'll tell you why it shouldn't be.
I fell so in love with all those characters on there. It was just a very emotional show, and it was something I think bonded me to a lot of people. And it was just very interesting, and I never have watched a show where there were so many characters that you could either like or dislike so strongly.
That's fair. I shouldn't shit on your opinion because it's your opinion, right? The thing that is the exact same reason why I did not like Game of Thrones is because there are too many characters that came in, and then you get attached to them, and then they're dead already. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, now I don't really know who I need to... Now I don't need to know who I need to like. What I would like to do right now, though, after watching all of it, and now that it's over, I would like to go back, and I would like to watch the entire show again, but minus everything that's not the 3 people that live at the end.
No. I will say that the second time you watch Game of Thrones is better than the first time you watch Game of Thrones, because there's not like eggs in there. There are eggs in there, but if you've watched it all the way, then you understand the relationships. You see the relationships, but then when you rewatch it, there was so much that you didn't even know that happened, and these conversations that happened, and these connections that you didn't realize that they hit on in earlier seasons, which makes things make sense.
Right. They talk about characters that you don't see until 2 seasons later.
And so I couldn't, I've watched Game of Thrones. I mean, I couldn't tell. I think I've watched Game of Thrones more than anything else. Like when I watch Game of Thrones, every time a season comes in, I watch the last season. When I watch the show, I watch it once. I watch it that night. I watch it the next day. And then before the next episode, I watch that episode again before the next episode. I fucking love Game of Thrones. Anyways, and it is really talky. Cat Lady says you don't like talky shows, but that's what I like. That's why I liked Lord Varys, and Littlefinger was one of my favorites because I liked those conversations. It was very interesting to me.
It's not that I didn't like talk. It's not that I don't like talky shows. What I don't like is when you're talking about a character that hasn't even been introduced yet, and you're talking about him like we should know him. Or her, one of them. That's one of the things that I really did not like about that show. Is that?
But that's realistic. When you're, it's a Game of Thrones, and you're talking about these other thrones, then you have to. I mean, you have to talk about these other characters and these other kingdoms.
You're not wrong.
Watch it again. I think you'll like it better the second time.
I might, but that's a long time to commit to it, though.
Because I will say, I think when I first watched it, I wasn't. Did I not like it? I don't know. It's such a long time ago now. But rewatching it the second time is better than the first. The third time is probably better than the second. And it's kind of like the movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. The first time it's good, but the second time is brilliant.
Yeah. Those kind of movies I do appreciate a lot. Like that, like anything Christopher Nolan does, I really like those.
That's not Christopher Nolan. That's John Vachon.
No, I'm just saying Christopher Nolan.
Vachon. I'm sorry, it's not John Vachon.
Christopher Nolan does movies like that, like Inception or The Prestige, where you have to watch it a few times, and then you're like, oh.
Michel Gondry. Some French. It's Eternal Sunshine, but yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
I will say that about Game of Thrones, I think a lot of people didn't like the ending. I liked the ending, but I think that show was doomed for their ending because they didn't have, just because of the way that the show was structured, right?
Yeah.
Their whole structure was character building and then story building and then let's just keep building on the story, and then we're still building on the story, and we're building it, and then we're building it, and we're building it.
It is what it is. They had to. I mean, they had to end it somehow. I mean, I appreciate that they kind of hurried stuff along. Like we didn't have, like if they're traveling to another place on a boat, we didn't have to watch them on the boat. They just were there 5 minutes later. Like the last 2 seasons, they kind of hurried it up. But
yeah,
it is what it is. I was satisfied. You know, I mean, you're never gonna be happy.
I was too.
I think that show.
Go ahead.
Everybody invested a lot of time and a lot of emotion into those characters. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think the visual of the ending, where spoiler alert, for anybody that hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, your spoiler alert. You get 5 seconds.
Yeah, 5 seconds.
All right, go ahead.
But don't leave. Everyone stay here. Just mute it. The visual of, and it's not really even that big of a spoiler, when the dragon burns the throne,
the Iron Throne.
That visual in itself was probably what they thought of day one when the show was being created. They're like, what if we have at the very end the dragon burns the throne, because that's what he's pissed off that's what everybody was fighting over, and that the certain person that
I was gonna say I'm always curious when people are writing shows if they know the ending. I mean, obviously in this case it was a book, but it was based on a book, but the series went beyond the book, ended up going beyond what he actually wrote.
Yeah. Well,
that was my number 2.
Your number 2? All right. Well, I'll give you my number 2. Speaking of shows that ended terribly, my number 2 is Lost.
I would like to rewatch Lost.
I'm in I'm in the process of rewatching it right now. And I will say that so I'm like midway through season 2 right now. And I would say the first like 12 episodes of season 1 are pretty boring. And it's a 24 episode season. So it's pretty boring, but also what it is it's area building, right? So it's building what the area is, but it's also building the characters, and the show itself has a great setup where it's, hey, we're going to show you what happened in real time, but then we're also going to give you a little bit of a hint of a backstory on them. But then the second half of season 1 and to the entirety of season 2, I think is probably some of the best TV that's ever been made, period. Like ever.
It's a very emotional show. I cried a lot on that show. I mean, it's one of my favorite shows. I actually forgot. If I could fit it on a list, I could. But yeah, I mean, I loved that show.
And that the show, the whole thing that I really liked about that show, which we don't see very often today, is that show was on before TiVo happened, or like as TiVo was happening, DVR was happening and stuff like that. All this stuff, like all that was just starting to get there, right? So it was something that you sat in. It was every Thursday night. You sit there, you watched it, and then they had this huge cliffhanger episode, and then you went on to forums and you tried to talk to everybody and see what it was, what happened the last episode.
I binge watched. There's 7 seasons, I believe, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
7. I binge watched the first 6. And then I got caught up because I hadn't watched it. So I binge watched the first 6. And then I got to the 7th and I had to wait episode for episode, which was painful. But to me, sometimes when you binge things, it's all like a giant movie.
Right.
It's different. It's different than watching it episode by episode.
Which, what is funny is that's how I watched Game of Thrones.
That's how I watched, I think, the first 2 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. But yeah, I know that Viking in chat, which, hey, Omni, how's it going? Wario God, how you doing? Viking in chat was, I don't know if the show was over yet, but I remember we were still in school when it was airing, and he sat there during class watching it because he was so obsessed with watching it and trying to figure out what happened. And the only reason that I would put Lost at number 2, not at number 1, is because the show revolved around one thing, and it was the mystery of what is the island. And
Oh
they
god.
stretched that out for 6.5
What is the island
seasons.
though?
But we don't really even know, though, is the
What is
thing.
the island?
Like, it was technically like, I think what they were saying was like it was kind of like purgatory, or like halfway between, you know, heaven and hell, but also in between Earth. But they could somehow fly. They could somehow ride a boat back to regular Earth from the. I don't even
what's
know
the
what.
main, it's the main character. His name Jack. Is it
Yeah,
Jack?
Jack Shepherd.
Oh, fucking Captain America. He drove me fucking nuts. Like he was. I was always like, shut the fuck up. Fucking Captain America here, always like making fucking decisions and pretending like he doesn't want to make all the decisions.
I know, right?
Ugh.
It's definitely, yeah. There was a part in season 4, like basically after the Dharma Initiative got introduced and what it was.
Mm-hmm.
After that was kind of when the show and I think that what I heard recently and what makes a little bit of sense is that was when the writer strike was occurring at that time.
Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day. How many those shows?
Yeah. So if you think about not only that, as well as the ABC wanted to make that a 10-season show,
Mm-hmm.
and they had it's like season 4. They're like, okay, writers are gonna go on strike, but we want 10 seasons out of the show, and they're like, we have like 7 episodes left. Like, we don't have anything else that we want to put on here.
J.J. Abrams is like, I'm ready to move on.
So yeah, for real, he was like ready to go with it, right?
Let me make these Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
But I love J.J. Abrams too. Because did you watch Alias? I wish it, but Alias deserves to be on this too. Oh,
I did not watch Alias a lot, but I knew that it of what it was.
Alias so good. Also J.J. Abrams. Also Felicity. But
He's done a lot of things.
I like J.J. Abrams too.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the whole reason why Lost is not at number 1 is because it felt like season whatever after the Dharma Initiative was kind of a thing, and once everything kind of started getting really weird, that was when the show kind of fell downhill. So,
I also say that what was interesting about Lost, it was the first show. I don't know if there's other shows like that, but it was the first show that I remember where they had non-English speaking characters, where they had Jin and whatever her name was,
Sun,
that were Korean, where you actually where they didn't make them speak English.
Yeah.
Like Sun obviously
mm-hmm.
did speak English. We learned.
Wow,
but
spoilers, dude.
But they're shut up. But they're it's first season spoiler.
Yeah.
But their flashbacks even are all in Korean.
Yeah.
Which it was the first time where I remember being like, wow, they're not whitewashing this, and they're letting them actually show their culture.
Yeah. And that's what we were kind of talking about Korean culture earlier. That was one of the things that I was actually thinking about, because I forgot how much that they went into. I mean, they did go pretty in depth into some of the, at least like what you would see. Like, they didn't talk about it like a whole lot, but just like seeing it and stuff like that was definitely a lot.
Yeah, so I started rewatching it since I started learning Korean. I should just go. I'm gonna rewatch it actually. Now that you say that, I kind of forgot about it. But yeah, I mean, the Korean is legit. I mean, like if you're watching a Korean show and you're listening to them speak English, or they have English speakers, it's so ridiculous. It's like, let's go get in that car. It's like, it's so stupid. But the Korean in Lost is legitimate.
Yeah.
Like, they're not like making it silly. It's legit.
I gotcha. It makes sense. Well, have to go that route.
Number 1.
All right, number 1. You may go. I think.
Yeah.
All right, it's me. Number 1. And this is a number 1 with an asterisk, but I am gonna put Stranger Things at number 1 for my sci-fi shows. Did I steal your number 1? Is that not?
No, not at all.
Not even close. What?
That wouldn't be in my top 20.
Oh my goodness. So the thing about this show that I really liked was, once again, the character building and stuff, and the characters that they made and everything like that. But this is not a show. Stranger Things is not a show where they're going to Maybe it's just because my pea brain can't handle the thought process of the Game of Thrones writers. But it's a very straightforward show, right? They're creating it. They're creating an area for you. They're creating this whatever it may be. They're creating this field of what you can see, and then they're just keeping it within that, and it's simple. There's still some call outs to like the the 80s and stuff like that. The only thing that I don't like about Stranger Things is the same thing that I don't that I was not necessarily that not necessarily that I don't like about it, but the same thing as Dragon Ball Z, where it sort of has this Goku effect, is what it's called, where so like 11 is the only one who has powers in that show, other than like the Demogorgons and stuff like that. So she is the one who has to come save the day every time. That is the only thing that I don't like about it in comparison, because that's the exact same way that Dragon Ball Z is, which we have some Dragon Ball Z stands in the chat. So it is what it is. I'm getting called out right now. But that's how it is in from what I see in my, just for my opinion. But other than that, the characters are great. The ideas are great. Simple. All that good stuff.
I don't have anything to say. I mean, I like Game of Thrones. I mean, not Game of Thrones. I like Game of Thrones.
Get Game of Thrones out of your head.
Actually, I still hadn't watched season 2 of whatchamacallit. Or
Stranger Things?
Or season 3. I haven't watched season 3.
Oh, season 3.
So I was rewatching season 2 last week.
You will cry watching season 3. Just saying.
So I was like, I want to watch season 3, but I should rewatch season 2. So I'm rewatching that currently.
There you go. Killer Queen, what's up?
It's not my. I would never put that in the top of anything.
Well, that's my top 5. So yes. Give me your number 1. Best of all time.
Best of all time is Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, come on, really?
Mm-hmm. I love Battlestar Galactica.
I have zero input on that show because the only knowledge that I have from that show is from The Office. So.
Oh, Bears beat Battlestar Galactica.
Yep, that's the one.
But yeah, no, I think Battlestar Galactica is my. Buffy was my favorite for the longest, and as soon as I watched Battlestar Galactica the first time, I thought it was brilliant. It's smart. It's political. It's interesting. I love the characters.
What is Battlestar Galactica about? I don't even know, really. That's not like Stargate, is it? I don't even know.
I don't know what Stargate is, but
okay.
I have watched some of the 100. So Battlestar Galactica is about. So I'll just tell you the first episode.
Sure.
But so there's this old ship called the Battlestar Galactica, that is having a retirement party for the ship. There are these robots called Cylons that the humans made at one point, and the Cylons all of a sudden disappeared, rebelled and then disappeared, and every year the humans would have this space station where they would supposed to meet with the Cylons to discuss foreign affairs, but the Cylons never showed up. And then but all of a sudden the Cylons basically nuke Caprica, which is the name of this planet. So they nuke Caprica, and all of a sudden you have this ship, the Battlestar Galactica, which is this old ship that is now kind of in charge of the fleet. And it's Edward James Olmos, who is just amazing. And it's basically because this old ship, didn't have the newer technology to it, which kind of makes it a better ship because it's not hooked up with computers and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I don't know. It's basically it's the Cylons come back. They take over Caprica. So there's all these ships that are looking for somewhere to go while they're battling the Cylons. You come to find out that the Cylons look like humans. And so it's kind of the whole series is 4 seasons. You're trying to figure out who's a Cylon, who's not a Cylon, who's in charge, who's not in charge. Like the person that ends up becoming president is like the Secretary of Education because she happened to be on the Battlestar Galactica at that time, and everybody else of the administration was killed. It's a lot of iconic actors in it. It's just a good show.
Yeah, say
the fight scenes are
like,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I just say that was the one thing that I think I remember the most from it is like a lot of the actors were not as big then, but then that kind of brought them up to be like to the main stage basically.
No. I think it's the opposite.
Was it? Oh,
well, I mean, Edward James Olmos is Edward James Olmos, and then you have what's that chick that like warrior chick that used to have a show in the 90s,
like Lawless, Lucy Lawless.
Yeah, Lucy Lawless is in
Xena?
it.
Yeah.
Xena, Princess Warrior. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Well, now I'll have to watch it.
It's a brilliant. I'm rewatching it currently.
Now that I have like some knowledge of like what it's about, it actually like interests me to watch it.
It's funny. There's characters that are very funny. Kit Boga was gonna name his son after one of the characters.
Oh
he was actually gonna trying to decide what, like between two of the characters on Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
He wanted to name like his kids after two of the characters. Like he's a big fan.
Oh my goodness.
It made me happy when he was saying he wanted to name his child Gaius, who's like he's like the little finger, but worse than little finger. Like he's just so slimy.
Well,
but it's good.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of more free time now that I'm just still stuck at my house. So, we'll have to, I guess things are starting to release up a little bit here in Nebraska where we live. So maybe they'll shut it all down again. Who knows? just in time to watch more TV shows, right?
The top 5 was fun. I enjoyed doing it again.
It was, yeah. Any honorable mentions? I have one.
Who are your honorable mentions? I have to think.
I have one honorable mention. It's the new Watchmen show that was on HBO.
I have not watched it. It's good.
It is good, and if you liked the movie, it is like 30 years past that, but it still follows from that same universe.
Want you to say.
I'm not going to say the 100 because I haven't watched it, but now that it's ending, I may watch it. Now that I can all watch it in one sitting.
If I was gonna do some shout outs, I really liked Vampire Diaries is good, of course, because we talked about that.
Right.
Dollhouse was good. Firefly is good.
I was wondering if you were going to bring up Firefly.
Anything Joss Whedon is good.
Yeah.
Alias is very good.
Alias was good for the episodes that I watched. I remember that.
I'm missing something, but I can't remember what show I'm not thinking about. But yeah, I mean, there's so many good sci-fi shows out there. There's so many shows that you just don't even realize have that element to it. Like Smallville was good.
Yeah. Yeah. All these honorable mentions, that's why they're honorable mentions and not in the top 5. That's right.
Arrow's good.
Yeah, all the CW shows.
I like CW shows. Yeah. They're keeping it alive, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're getting towards the end here, so let's start to shut it down. I do just want to remind everybody that this podcast is available live on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more for completely free. But if you don't want the hassle of trying to find it, there's a one-stop shop that has them all. So if you're in the Twitch chat, type !podcast, or you can look it up at tatertalks.buzzsprout.com, and that will have your favorite links to download, to download the podcast anywhere in one spot. It's a very, very good host system. Shout out Buzzsprout. And also shout out everybody in the chat. I'm sorry I don't really call out chats or call out alerts and stuff when they come through, but everybody from the Avalanche Discord that came through, appreciate you. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follows, and that does put you in the Tater Tot Nation here. So make sure you have a good time. All right. So one final. I just want to thank you for being on the show again. Anything that you want to promote? Anything that you want to toss out there again?
No. I don't really do much Twitch-wise or social media-wise. I'm on Instagram, NotoriousAfro. I do the social media for Amon Green, and I'm usually and I'm a mod on his stream. So if you ever want to
Yeah.
come hang out with Amon, do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I need to get in touch with you because we have an open spot on the podcast for him, so we need to get that to happen too. So we'll make it
Yeah,
happen. Make it happen
for,
for a future episode. Future episode
for sure.
for sure. All right. Well, yeah. Once again, thank you for being on the show. Appreciate you. I'm gonna go ahead and mute you here, but if you want to stay here for a minute, we'll
Yeah.
finish everything up and we'll make sure we get everything going for you. Yeah. Once again, thank you for being on the show. And to everybody else here on the podcast, this is going to be Taterboy09 signing off, reminding you that a minute spent in this chat is a wasted minute. So let's make it a damn good time. And I hope you had a damn good time today. Thank you very much.